Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast in the Money Media YouTube channel. We're not doing our traditional recap in this week's show, our show for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. Instead, we're going to do something we talked about doing a few weeks ago. Today is the day. We've got Nick Tammaro here with me, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you in the Brooklyn Bunker once again. And we're going to go over his current top 10 for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Nick, tell me about this exercise. This is something that you and other media members do all year long, submitting this list for the official that then become your rankings are not the official ones, but these feed into the official Breeders' Cup Classic rankings. How does this process work?
Yeah, pretty much exactly what you just said. So the Breeders' Cup asked me, and I think a slew of other quasi-media types. I was probably on the AE list and worked my way in. And,
somebody said no, and then they called you, kind of a deal.
They're like, oh, well, hell with it, we'll ask him. But they have us vote for our top 10 for the Classic. I feel like we've been doing it since the Whitney and thereabouts. So I think right around the start of Saratoga. And, it's been fun to see it evolve, obviously, as these horses started again. Unfortunately, we're at a point now where it doesn't feel like many of them are going to run again before the Breeders' Cup, which, is kind of unthinkable 20 years ago, but that's the case now. So maybe, I could see myself maybe changing out a 9th or 10th, depending on the Woodward and Lucas Classic. But yeah, it's been the case pretty much every week. And mentioned it to you a few weeks ago, felt like it would be a fun way to not only promote the Breeders' Cup, but recap a little bit on our end. And we'll incorporate in these standings some of the horse that ran the biggest race over the weekend.
Yes, we'll get to Baeza as the list goes on. And yeah, this is one that shouldn't, if we did a lot of divisions top 10s now, I mean, they'd be dated instantly. This one, as we said, recording September 22nd, it might stay pretty evergreen. We've got so much Breeders' Cup content coming down on the In the Money Media Network. Basically, the ways you need to know if you want to follow everything we have cooking. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Going to be a lot of exclusive stuff there in the Money Media. We also will get comment chatter going there. So if you're listening on the audio side, which we still have a whole lot of people who do, make sure if you want to get in on the conversation, you head over to YouTube, drop a comment, let us know your top 10 or at least who your number one should be. Nick's got a good opinion for that. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video so you can hear what he's got to say about the top of this list. Also, wherever you get your podcasts, In the Money Players Podcast, and we've got our free email, inthemoneypodcast.com/email. If somehow that's all not enough for you, and for a lot of you it isn't, we've also got In the Money Plus, and we're going to have a whole special Breeders' Cup package that's going to be available, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. I'm going to wait for the serious shilling of that until we know I can start teasing soon all the different fun things we're going to have in that package this year. But with that business out of the way, let's dive into this list, starting with the horse you've got at number 10. I'm curious if you consider this one a serious contender for the race, or if it's more one because, somebody had to be 10.
Probably the latter. And I did like the race that Magnitude ran over the weekend and being second in the Pennsylvania Derby. He's a horse I've always had some affinity for, but what he did in the Pennsylvania Derby, Pete, was he showed the ability to sit a little bit off the pace and still be effective. I think he's going to be a really nice 4-year-old. And given the way we've seen some of Steve Asmussen's horses get better as time's gone by, which I find myself amazed saying that, 15, 20 years ago, I would have said, oh, Steve, year to year, sometimes doesn't really bring him back. Now it seems like all of his handicap horses usually get better as time goes by. But I like the race he ran. He's an interesting classic horse because he will undoubtedly juice up the pace a little bit. So if he goes, he'll make his presence known, maybe not so much because of his finishing position, maybe more so because of his early position.
That's an excellent point. As we go through this list, we can start even this far out, maybe thinking a little bit about what this pace might shake out as being, and that dimension of being able to rate at least a little. That could be an important thing for Magnitude. Currently 33-1 in the international betting. Feels like about the right price to me, honestly. What do you think?
Yeah, he feels like a 30-1 shot at the off, coming off a 101 buyer speed figure in the Pennsylvania Derby. I think it's right around there. Having run second, he's run some fast races. I could see maybe a little wise guy love for him. We'll see if Steve does what he's generally done, which is send his horses out early to the West Coast to get them acclimated. And I know he did that successfully with Echo Zulu, and over time he's done it with more horses than that, untappable. That would certainly bolster his chances.
Number 9 on your list, another one that I'm guessing a little bit more of a fill out the list than one that seems like a proper contender. This one already has a Breeders' Cup win on the resume. Full Serrano clocking in at number 9, 40-1 internationally. What do you think this one's upside is at this point?
Yeah, so Full Serrano and Magnitude were both new top 10 listees, I guess you could say, for this week. And I'll let you know who. So Gosger, I had previously 9th. He came out. And then another horse that I had a little bit ahead of him also came out. Full Serrano is interesting. I really didn't realize until yesterday that he was even a classic possibility. I guess it just eluded me over the weekend that a story came out by Steve Anderson that he's going to run in the Goodwood and will likely be a heavy favorite now that Nisos is not running there. And, I think his upside is pretty high. It just seems like what we've seen of him to this point, it feels like he would have needed a classic from like 23 or 19.
Right.
And this 25 classic, a lot like the 24 classic, it's not for the faint of heart. It's truly deserving of the name.
Yeah, 8 deep, I think, in terms of horses that are hard to call anything other than serious contenders, starting with the one who won the Pennsylvania Derby and is one that still, given the hands he's in, given what we know about his training patterns, not too hard to surmise that this horse still has some blue sky left to show. Baeza gets a 105 for that win in the Pennsylvania Derby. And I'm not going to argue with anybody who says this is the one of all the ones we've seen that's still kind of the least exposed, given the to me, famous line John Sheriff basically said, not in so many words, to Jonathan, that he lets the horses train themselves up to a certain point. What do you think about Baeza going forward?
Yeah, look, I think long-term, he's probably the most interesting 26 prospect of this 3-year-old class, just assuming a lot of the heavies are going to get put away for good. Journalism likely will. We'll see what happens with Sovereignty as far as the Dubai World Cup and whatnot. So, long-term, I'm buying Baeza stock. It was great to see him win a grade 1. Obviously, a horse that was still eligible for a 1 other than, because he had knocked heads with the heavies in the division and had hardly disgraced himself with a bunch of grade 1 placings, and that good runner-up finish in the Jim Dandy. I think my biggest concern with him at this point, Pete, to be perfectly honest, is not really sure he wants a 1.25 miles. I think he might be better at that 8 to 9 furlong trip. But what I do know is that if a guy is going to get him ready for that in the most thorough and comprehensive fashion, it feels like Sheriff's. Right. It feels like he's the right guy to do that. And, it looked strategically as if it played out just as they wanted it. They skipped the Travers, probably figured hell with it. Why get our head kicked in again by Sovereignty? Even though Sovereignty hardly kicked his head in Jim Dandy, the version of Sovereignty that we saw in the Travers would have been very tough to beat. He would have been second, more than likely. And so they opted to go to the Pennsylvania Derby, and it paid off beautifully. I like Hector Berrios on him as well. I feel like Flavien Prat may have let him have a little too much to do in both the Derby, and maybe not so much Flavien's fault in the Derby. In the Belmont, he willingly took him farther off of it. I like how aggressive Berrios has been with him. He wants to utilize his speed a lot more, and obviously in dirt route racing in this country, speed kills.
Yeah, and to clarify about my Sheriff's comment, it does feel like he is somebody, to reconcile with what you said, he does feel like somebody who still trains a bit more for stamina than speed, and that's why you could see a horse like this who had the brilliance so naturally early on is so interesting, maybe in the classic and definitely going forward. Let's get 100%. To the next name on the list, one that I'm very curious to know if you, in your research for this top 10 list, have any current updates on. We're going to certainly be getting them in the coming weeks, but based on the resume, Forever Young, kind of hard to argue with. A 109 it was in last year's Breeders' Cup Classic. He looked terrific over the winter in Saudi. What do you think's next for Forever Young?
Yeah, he feels he's definitely the forgotten horse, right? Because he underperformed in Dubai and now hasn't been seen. I believe the plan is to do similar to what they did last year and give him a prep in Japan and then send him over. So all eyes are going to be on that race. I'm not exactly sure. I should have looked to see what it's called and what the date is.
Maybe that Dirt Classic that he ran in last year?
Yeah. I feel like it was on a Tuesday or Wednesday last year as well.
Yeah. It was October 2nd last year.
Okay, so there you go. So hopefully, somewhere around there would give him ample time to get over and get acclimated. But bottom line is this horse has just run too well domestically in the couple of trips he's made over here to not be given serious consideration. And I would imagine the Japanese contingent will be strong once again. They clearly love West Coast Breeders' Cups, a shorter trip, and they kind of went away a little humbled last year, which means that I think they're going to make the proper adjustments and certainly make their presence known this year.
It'll be interesting to see, especially with the 2-year-olds who all seemingly underperformed, if they either don't bring as many or if something has changed in the prep. Some of it's just randomness, right? It's really hard to win races at the Breeders' Cup.
It is. I also think that there was I don't know if I want to call it a misunderstanding, but I think there was an underestimation on their part about pace in this country. And, a-holes like me love to make a joke about how we don't have pace and things like that. But the thing is, for all intents and purposes, our dirt races are run at a fast pace. Their dirt races aren't, right? And it felt like most of the biggest underperformances on the dirt last year were from horses that were just badly compromised pace-wise. There was the really nice filly in the juvenile fillies that got close to that pace. Now, that pace was scorching, and I mean, she was done at the 3/8 pole. So it was a reminder to everybody like, hey, our horses are still fast early. And if you want to take them on in the opening quarter or half mile of a route race, good luck, because these races have some good closers in them too.
Bring your running shoes for sure. Another place, Japan, I think is very safe to say, much more of an emphasis on stamina than on speed. You'll see all the, mile and an eighth or maiden races and things like that in these horses, PPs, things that are an anomaly here are commonplace for the best horses over there. Just a different approach to the game. Forever Young's shown he can do it before. He and Baeza both 12-1. I just sort of took there's a lot of different prices out there. I didn't go with best price. I just sort of estimated my own idea of what these horses were generally, putting them both at about 12.
Let me ask you real quick. So if they're each 12, who are you taking of those two?
Oh, that's such a tough one. It's really hard. I think I'm going to go, pending the vibes, I might go with Forever Young just because the 109 last year under similar conditions, and then that ridiculously awesome race we saw in Saudi. But I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm definitely right about that. That's a real reasonable minds can disagree. Gun to your head, which way do you go?
I would go with Forever Young too. 12 on Baeza feels pretty colored with
recency
bias.
Yeah.
He feels more like a 15-20-1 shot in there.
Antiquarian, number 6 on the list. He's up next. This Centennial Farms Color Bear 108, the best buyer for him. He's got a progressive pattern. What do you think? Which version of Antiquarian do you think we're going to see? Is this a new level of ability? Could he even have more in the tank, or could there be some regression to the mean here, given the unusual circumstances of that big win?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Pete, no matter what, he is the most overlooked horse of 2025. He has run, and you could have people say, well, he's won one grade one, big deal. What are you blowing your horn about? But he's run winning races multiple times, including in the Blame and the Suburban. And then I was glad that he did get to put it together in the Jockey Club Gold Cup to get the win. But as you said, I mean, a campaign that is a little un-Pletcher-like in that it's kind of worked backwards.
Yeah.
But, obviously Todd would like to win the Breeders' Cup Classic every year. And if he has the right horses in his arsenal, he'll certainly be able to. But Antiquarian's a horse that has seemingly gotten better as the years gone by, which, not necessarily always been the thing from Todd's barn. But he's done a great job with this horse. He was a decent 3-year-old, but he's let him have the proper amount of time to get ready for a 4-year-old campaign where he's clearly gotten better. And, I mean, speed figure-wise, he's a cut below the best, but that's just because this is a really good classic. This is a race where Antiquarian, if you drop him into some of those classics that I referenced early, like 19 or 23, he's like a 5 or 6-1 shot.
Yeah.
Right. And he's going to be 15 or 20-1 in this race.
Yeah. 14 internationally right now, and could get more overlooked than that. I mean, when we get closer and we see how all these narratives pan out, we got 5 more horses to talk about. Quick shout out for our own In the Money Horse Players Tour. We are getting down to the nub. October 3rd, our playoffs begin. We do still have an opportunity this week for folks to qualify for our playoffs. If you finish in the top 4 of this $20 feeder, you get to play in our basically private tournament, our playoff tournament, for a $10,000 BCBC seat at no extra cost. It's also a regular feeder into a qualifier for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge on Saturday. These games happen on Friday. They cost $20. The house cut goes to charity. Get involved at horseplayers.com. Good to see In the Money's own James Millar punching his ticket to the playoffs. He's been a very active player and one of the good guys. So good to see him having some success. All right, let's go to number 5 on your list. It's Journalism. I love this horse. I'm curious to see. Obviously, we know exactly where you rank him relative to these other contenders. 10-1 internationally. Is that the right price on Journalism?
Probably. Right. I mean, you look at what price he went off in the Pacific Classic and you think to yourself, how the hell did he go off so short? But, we underestimate being, sort of on the inside, being racing fans, being involved in this day to day, that the Derby, the Preakness, the Belmont, they carry an enormous amount of cachet. That you see a horse that ran in all 3, ran well. He's obviously popular with that big, flashy Preakness run to get the job done with all the trouble. It seems unlikely he can win this race. Right, you're putting him 5th on a list in a top 10 because of accomplishment, because of sort of almost as an honorable mention in many ways. That being said, do I trust Michael McCarthy to take 2 months to get the horse trained up, to really put the screws to him and figure out how to get him back to peak fitness? Yes, I implicitly trust him to do exactly that, and so that's why he has to be on a short list of contenders.
What do you think the right idea is for him in terms of running style going forward? Do they embrace the fact that he doesn't seem to want to show early speed, and do they hope he could actually maybe try to outclose the closers in a race like this? Or would you rather see him looking really sharp and giving that early speed energy and maybe turning back the clock to the spring, maybe even having a step forward in him? Which of those two scenarios between, deep closer and presser do you want to see him do as in a race like the Classic?
I think the good thing is that there's going to be enough pace in here to ensure that he probably can't be too close, because if he is too close, then it's just going to totally cook his goose. Right, he's not going to be able to run close to the pace. The pace will be solid in here. You end up getting a fast opening half mile and a mile and a quarter at Del Mar no matter what, because of the straightaway, the good size run up, and the amount that they just pinball around that first turn. So I would say they want to be, ideally they want to be 3, 4, 5 lengths ahead of the likes of Sierra Leone and Sovereignty. They don't want to have to outclose them. But he's a tricky horse in that he really runs best with a target.
Exactly.
The problem, of course, is he had a target coming off the far turn in the Pacific Classic, and the target kind of looked back and was like, yeah, not today. So you want to time it so that you're really getting Sierra Leone's trip from last year. Right? You're moving aggressively down the backstretch into the turn. You're trying to get towards the lead by the quarter pole, and then you're hopeful that everybody else has too much to do from that point forward.
Really interested to hear the news on him, how he's doing. We're going to have plenty of updates regarding Journalism. We'll have to check in with Michael McCarthy at some point, friend of the show as well. Number 4 on your list is the most vexing horse to analyze from this far out, because of the fact that we don't have the prep, and we're not going to have a race, right? He's training up as well. What in the world? How do you solve a problem like Mindframe, another one who the bookies have generally around 10-1?
Yeah, you say to yourself, man, if Mindframe wins this race, there are people that are going to think, I'm going to train up from the Foster to the Classic. Right. So obviously not by design. Todd wanted him to run in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but then the unfortunate opening quarter mile kept that from happening. I really, really wanted to see this horse in the Lucas Classic or the Woodward to give us more of a line on exactly where he is. Looking at those two fields, he would have won each of them handily, and then he would have been well bet. The question marks with him still are, does he really want a mile and a quarter? We were supposed to find out about that in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but didn't get an opportunity to. Is he as effective at that kind of trip? Where's he going to be early? He sat on a slow pace in the Foster and burst clear late. He came from way off of it going 7/8. Obviously, that's a different game. He is just a riddle wrapped in an enigma, right? He is the horse that it's hard to have any definitive opinion on him right now, because there's so many unknowns. I think when push comes to shove, the top 3 that I have on there are better than him. and it makes me wonder one of whom is a horse that he has beaten twice. But I do think they're better than him in the context of this race, if that makes sense. I think this 1.25 miles with this kind of pace scenario feels like a big ask.
Let's talk about the first of those three, the one that you have ranked third, a horse who, but for I don't want to say bad luck because but I mean, you could say bad luck that he had that he had in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. This horse could be the favorite in certain worlds, certain alternative universes, prongs of the multiverse where the trip worked out a little bit differently last time. I guess nobody's going to be the way they're. Wait till you hear how they're betting the horse who's number 2 on your list internationally, and maybe the favorite is a little strong. But Sierra Leone 5-1. I mean, this horse, if he gets the right kind of trip, I don't know how he isn't an A-level contender, right? I mean, you have him third on the list, but you can easily see him getting the right circumstances to beat the top 2, I would assume.
Yeah. So I flip-flopped him and who I have first after the closing weekend at Saratoga.
Okay.
And it was just because, you know what you're getting with Sierra Leone, right? You're getting a big one-run closer that is going to be vulnerable when it comes to the trip, to the pace, all of those things. So with that said, there's something that's notably different about his classic of 24 versus basically every other race he's ever run. And I don't know whether it was just that he was so ready to roll that day, whether it was that he loved Del Mar, he loved the ocean breeze, whatever it was, but everybody, I think the biggest mistake you can make about analyzing last year's classic is to simply watch it and say, oh my God, look at those fractions. Fierceness ran so incredibly well. He was the best by far, blah, 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 blah. You have to take a look at that race also and say, okay, but at the same time, nobody moved from off the pace except Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone moved into the teeth of that pace. Yep. So the quickest quarters are when he was moving into it, and he got the lead at the quarter pole. Like, he didn't run down Fierceness in the final 70 yards when he had just broken everybody in half. It wasn't Bodemeister and I'll have another. Right. It was much more of a scenario where, Sierra Leone was incredibly handy the whole way around there. That version of Sierra Leone will win again.
Right.
I'm confident in that.
That's interesting. Well,
it's just a question of if that version shows up.
Right.
Because he's another one where he has those days where we're like, he's a competent grade 2 horse, like when we saw it at Fairgrounds, and then you see the Whitney and you're like, okay, that's the horse that we grew to love last year, and he is racing's most lovable loser in many ways, and I think it's made the public retreat from him. But, if I were to tell you right now, Pete, hey, I'll let you have 5-6 to 1 on Sierra Leone. You're accessing whatever money you can to bet that.
Yeah, and that's what the situation is for those international people who live in civilized places where you can make anti-post wagers. 5-1 is the number. Sounds like you might be buying.
I'd be buying at 5-1 for sure.
Yeah. Well, now let's talk about a horse. And I guess, all right, you talked about the consistency issues with Sierra Leone. That's certainly going to come up with the horse that we have, or you have on top of your list. Sovereignty is your number 2. I would imagine he is, I don't know. Is he, you tell me, is he the consensus number 1 on your list? He certainly is in the market. 3-2 pretty much everywhere. I mean, he's being bet as if defeat is out of the question. There is the question that we need to see from Sovereignty is, can he handle his elders? Now, normally I think that's a huge question. As good as this 3-year-old crop is, I'm probably a little bit more confident that he can handle his elders than I would be of your average 3-year-old stepping up in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. Give me your overall thoughts on Sovereignty and basically explain to me why you don't have him number 1, I guess.
Yeah, I take a betting approach to these things in many ways too. And if you want to tell me you think Sovereignty is the best horse in training right now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time crafting an argument against it. I do think, and part of it was a little reactionary on my part, that after Fierceness handled journalism the way he did, it was a bit of a reminder that a good older horse still has a major advantage over a good 3-year-old. And we've just not had a lot of good older horses over the last 5 years or so, but we do in 2025. We do have good older horses, and we have horses with a combination of speed and stamina, closing types, ones that can rate. And my concern with Sovereignty is that, he's going to be running in this race. It's going to be his 3rd start in somewhere around 14 weeks. with those 2 races prior to the 10-week break being a 5-horse field and essentially a 4-horse field where he beat Bracket Buster and Baeza. There ain't no Bracket Buster in this race. Right? This is a different ball game. This is a much tougher race. There are closers in there that are as good as him, and there are way better speed horses than he's ever faced. So to me, the value proposition would tell you to bet against Sovereignty with both fists,
right?
Because you're going to be getting a depressed price on him based on reputation. And when you look through those PPs, and everybody's going to get that advanced set of PPs a week and a half or so out, and they're going to realize, I mean, other than the Travers, he's not a lot faster than these horses. It's not some kind of fait accompli. And why take 8-5 on a horse like this when I could have 5-1 on Sierra Leone, or even maybe 4-1 or more on Fierceness?
We'll get to Fierceness post haste. But yeah, you look at the best figures that we have on our graphics. Sierra 112. Sovereignty does own the best one at 115, and as a late season 3-year-old, it's not crazy to suggest he could go north from there. But the horse you have at number 1, I'm sure we've all figured it out by now. Fierceness, best buyer 111. But I think for him to be in this place on your list, I'm assuming you said you look at it a little bit through a gambling lens. His best price now, you're going to like this, 7-1. And this is a horse we know loves Del Mar's, run 2 of his best races there. I take your point. I don't think it's right to say that he was a lot better than Sierra in the Classic last year or anything like that. But I still do think, based on those early exertions, you can say that the gap is narrower than the margin. And as we go through this field, and there's a lot of closers in here, I mean, he sure looks like a great candidate to be the best speed, which is often the best trip, full stop. Tell me about your thought process in putting Fierceness number 1 on this list.
Yeah, so I upped him to the top spot after the Pacific Classic. I was really taken by his Pacific Classic effort. I thought he ran really, really well. You know, this is a horse that we've thrown the label on him over and over of not being able to overcome adversity. Here's was a situation where he did. Quite simply, he didn't have the trouble early was probably not as significant as people made it out to be. However, it still existed. He was behind horses. He was between horses. I mean, this is a horse that had had one cupcake trip after another when he had run well. This was the first time he really had to face something. He faced it, and he passed with flying colors and looked really good down the stretch. Feels like a horse that's perfectly in his element at 1.25 miles, probably more so at a place like Del Mar, where it's going to be a quicker race. It's not going to be that kind of more elongated type situation that you might face at a Belmont or Keeneland or Churchill. And so I think to me, he's the top contender at this point. He doesn't have he has the one grade 1 in 2025. So people are going to say his resume looks light comparatively. I still like that, this is his 4th start of 2025, whereas Sovereignty, they're going to be going to the well for the 8th time. And that's a different ball game when it comes to a horse that is had a taxing go of it, even though he may not have faced the greatest of horses in his last couple of starts. Bill Mott is going to have to keep him good for 10 weeks. Granted, Todd's going to have to keep Fierceness good for 9 weeks, but they've done this before. Mm-hmm. They've come into these races ready off of freshenings, and I just prefer to take somebody in lieu of Sovereignty, who, look, I'm never going to deny his presence in this race and how significant he is. This is a horse that likely could have or would have won the Triple Crown, an asterisk Triple Crown at that. But obviously a supreme talent, comes in with the best speed figure. No argument from me about his credentials, but I wanted to shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, and from a gambling point of view, everything you're saying makes sense. Just to clarify a little further, really hold your feet to the fire here. Who's the most likely winner of the race?
I mean, Sovereignty's probably the most likely winner. I would still be willing to say Sierra Leone, but we've been down that road before with him. We know how that ends up. But, I mean, look, if you were going to run the 10,000 simulations like you would betting football on a model, he probably wins the majority of the time. It may not be a huge majority, right? Maybe his is, 1,300 versus 900 for somebody else. So it's not. I think there probably aren't that many win candidates, but there are a lot. So, yeah, he's the likeliest winner. It's just going to be a question of whether he can deliver the same way against Elders off a little bit of a break, that kind of thing.
One last point I'll just make about Fierceness and the trip last time. You said it about one candy trip after another. So to see him in and between, even putting the beginning of the race aside, to see him in and among horses, just shutting off like he did and obeying the rider's instructions, that could represent a new level of ability and some untapped talent. And yeah, I mean, honestly, at the prices, he'd be my bet. I mean, 7-1 being the deciding factor there. That ain't bad on a horse that, is right there in the mix. There's just, I love Sovereignty. He'd be an A in all the horizontals and all that, but 3-2 would be way too short, and that might be reflective of what the public does. We're going to have to see lots more Breeders' Cup content to come. Nick, really appreciate you having shared this work with us and being here with us. We'll do some more of this, different top 10s. Let us know down below what you think about a Nick's Breeders' Cup top 10. Is he crazy to have Fierceness on top? Would you have Sovereignty? Is Sovereignty too short at 3-2? Are we talking a whole lot of nonsense? We want to hear what you think, and we also want to hear what you want us to do next. Is there another race you want us to do a top 10 for? We're here for your feedback in the comments. Nick, great having you on, and you and I have the same prescription for this week. Don't watch too much baseball.
Nope, I'm going to successfully avoid that. Good week for them to be on the West Coast.
Great stuff. If you are listening, we'll be back right after a short break. If you're watching on YouTube, check out some of the other In the Money videos, and make sure you leave a comment, subscribe while you're at it.